Connecting to lifelong learning through work-based learning, we've seen is quite complex, and there are a number of assumptions that we need to consider in terms of what makes good work-based learning. We need to think about what works well in terms of practice in work-based learning and what makes it work well, what makes work-based learning work well. And we saw a model, a matrix previously about work-based learning and the different dimensions of work-based learning. And essentially, bringing all these things together, there are certain outcomes that we can begin to appreciate. For example, outcomes and process-driven curriculum, learner-centered approaches to teaching, self-directed learning is a valuable outcome of work-based learning. Experiential processes, evidence-based assessment, and also work-based learning is very flexible in terms of the way learning can be managed. And so these form the key pedagogical features of work-based learning. It's very much focused on achieving the outcomes identified within the context, perhaps related to the curriculum, the process and objectives of the curriculum. Work-based learning tends to be very learner-centered and can also incorporate a contract, whether a formal or a hidden contract between the organisation and the learner. It's very much focused on self-directed learning, driven by the individual, and perhaps most importantly, work-based learning has a focus on learning how to learn, because this is a metacognitive aspect of learning for the reflective practitioner. And of course, work-based learning, because it's in the workplace, is experiential and therefore relates directly to the practice of the teacher. The application of learning in the workplace is another key feature of work-based learning. Rather than the teacher learning in a classroom outside of the work environment, work-based learning has immediate applications and therefore immediate outcomes, immediate benefits for the teacher. Within the workplace, of course, there's opportunity for support from the organisation, whether it's just through colleagues or through a critical friend or through a formal process like a mentor or a coach within the school. The outcomes for work-based learning also very much evidence-based. We can look at the outcomes as they're applied in the classroom and lends itself, work-based learning lends itself very nicely to reflective practice because it's ongoing learning in the context of the school, in the classroom environment. And work-based learning, of course, then has the potential to be very, very flexible in terms of the way learning is managed and engaged with by teachers in an ongoing basis. And so there are certain factors which can affect work-based learning, and these are context-specific. There are some ideas here, but there are certainly many other ideas which can impact on work-based learning. Perhaps the most significant to consider is accreditation and assessment of work-based learning. How is learning in the work environment assessed? And how is that assessment verified? And most importantly, how is it accredited? How do we evidence the learning which is taking place? So this is a key consideration for work-based learning. Another area to consider in terms of an influencing and supporting factor is how much support the provider, the teacher, the school can actually give to the individual teacher during learning in work. The idea of work-based learning is that it's flexible, and because colleagues are available in the environment, then there is a lot of support for the individual to develop. Another key area perhaps is the specific subject area, the occupational area that the teacher is working in. There is within, for example, a department, expertise that an individual teacher can draw on to develop. So there are a number of factors, there are some here, there are potentially many more, that are influencing and supporting factors for work-based learning.